is like a nice time to spend per passage, per se?
What is a nice time?
Yeah, because I'm struggling to like get to the end, honestly.
Well, okay, so getting to the end is not necessarily the best long-term strategy. It may be better to get to three, like say to yourself, I'm going to do 3 passages and I'm going to get all of them right. Or all but one wrong of those 3 passages. Kind of depends. So if you're at a position where you think you can get to all 4 passages and get 25 or more of those right, then you're in a position to do 4 passages. Okay, so 25, 24 or more, yeah?
I suppose my only apprehension with that approach is just that what if you just so happen to understand the 4th one better?
Oh, well, so, I don't have a problem. If you're saying if you're the approach of doing 3 passages.
Yeah. Because like when I took the practice test this weekend, like the 3rd one had like 8 questions, the last one had 5.
Yep.
And I like finished the 3rd one with like, or sort of with enough time to hit the 4th one, but then I realized the 4th one was a lot easier for me. And then I just ended up.
Yeah, so was the 3rd one a topic that you didn't like?
I guess, yeah. I was just like reading and I was like, I don't care about tokens, but yeah.
Tokens, yeah. So one thing, so there's a certain amount of randomness to that, right? So
yeah, for sure.
Sometimes the 3rd passage is going to be easier than the 4th or whatever, but for a lot of people, it comes down to the first sentence. So if you read the first sentence and it's like, you hate law passages, you know, which is a conundrum in itself. But if you hate law passages, then just skip it, because you're going to know right away, right? When they start saying, like, customary international law, you're like, nope. And in fact, even if you're a person who's doing all 4 passages, that's not an unreasonable strategy. Passage 1, passage 2, passage 3, law? No, I'm going to go do passage 4 now, and then I will finish 3 when at the end. Because if I do run out of time, I might as well run out of time on a passage I'm not as comfortable with. Now, even in that case, sometimes a law passage can be easier than a science passage, even though you like science's passages more. But we just don't have the time or resources to figure that out without conflicting with other problems, right? Because you want to spend that time mostly working. The only exception I would say is probably you don't want to skip the first passage, because the first passage tends to be easier even if it's a topic you don't like. The other consideration, which you can decide instantly, is comparative versus non-comparative. Some people love comparative passages, other people hate them. So if you hate them, you know, and you get it second, you might just say, forget it, let's do 3 and 4, and then if I have time, I'll just do what I can. So if you're doing 4 passages, my tendency is to spend about 4 minutes reading the passage and about 5 minutes answering the questions. It's close to 50-50, but not quite. But if you're doing 3 passages, then the ratios just kind of go up. So it's like 6 minutes to read the maybe 5 minutes to read the passage, and then 6 or 7 minutes to answer the questions. And then, which may sound like a long time, but if you're reading the passage, then the questions do go pretty fast. I would say most people, when they start out, they spend like 1 minute to 2 minutes reading the passage, and then they spend like 8 to 10 minutes answering the questions. But that's in part because they're actually going back and reading, so the time is just like actually probably the same. They just don't realize it, right? Because they get through the passage quickly, and then they're going back and they're rereading stuff, or you're getting questions wrong. I mean, hey, it's So, so let's say you get to the end of a section, or you're getting to the end of the section, and you only have 6 minutes left. Right? The 5-minute warning hasn't gone off yet, but you have 6 minutes for the last passage. That can seem nerve-wracking, but if you read the passage well in 3 minutes, or even 4, I can confidently go through those last questions quickly and stop at the answer choices that I'm confident are correct, because I have a solid understanding of the passage, and save a decent amount of time by not reading all the answer choices. Goes against my general advice to read all the answer choices, but like you know, if push comes to shove, you have 2 minutes left to answer the questions, and you have a good understanding of the passage. You didn't just skim it. But when you read question 21 and then you read answer choice A and you're like, that sounds like the main conclusion. You can get through a lot of questions if you pick that and then go to the next question. You're taking a risk, but as long as you recognize that. Whereas if you skim the passage, then I feel like a lot of the work you end up doing is kind of guessing anyways, and so I wouldn't feel as comfortable with that. Yeah.
Does the real digital LSAT have the timer that the Demon has?
It has the same timer. You can hide it until the 5-minute warning, and after the 5-minute warning, you can't hide it. So, and the red line goes around it. Someone there was like, "How could we increase anxiety levels?"
It's like weird because like on Saturday no one's timer worked, but for
Yeah,
some
I
reason
don't know what happened there.
mine worked
We're trying to
for the
figure that
whole
out.
test
Oh, it worked.
until the last section. I got logged out of the Demon in the middle of the first passage, came back, and then I didn't have a timer, and then not having a timer gave me like really bad anxiety.
Yeah.
And then I finished everything.
Yeah.
And I swear I was sitting there for probably 14 minutes because I like in my head thought I was like, oh my god, I probably have
You
no
don't
time.
have Go. Yeah. So given all the problems that LSAC is having, we just try to recreate that. Yeah.
Control and negative. So.
Well, hopefully we are trying to figure out that problem. I don't know what happened. That's because we didn't make any updates. But when it does come to the test day, by the way, I've heard repeatedly that when they pause your test, your timer is supposed to stop, and when they give you a new device, you're going to continue with the time you were supposed to have left. But, so let's say you're taking a test, right? And halfway through section 2, your device glitches out on the official test. You raise your hand, they can pause your timer, and you go get a new device, and when they give you the new device, your timer will resume with the time that you had. Which means everyone else in the room will wait for you to finish section 2, and then once section 2 is done, no pressure. Yeah, well, so, in theory that should be only a few minutes, right? You raise your hand, you go up, you get a new device, and now 3 minutes later, 5 minutes later, you have. And so people are just chilling. They're actually going to be happy, so don't stress too much, right? Because now they can get a break without an official accommodation letter. So they're just waiting for you to finish that section, and they don't even know necessarily who it is unless they start looking around. So, but the point is that I hear a lot of people who say their device glitched out, they went to get a new device, and the proctor's like, okay, I've paused your timer, but they didn't pause the timer. So, and the problem is you're kind of like, what's the phrase? Up Shit's Creek? Is that what it is?
Yeah.
Because all you can do is write LSAC and say, hey, I didn't get my 7 minutes, and they'll say, okay, what would you like to do? Do you want to cancel your score or take it again? And you're like, well,
Just give me 7 more points.
I would have liked the 7 minutes, or 7 points, 1 for each minute. So being kind of aware of what you are allowed to do is kind of crucial as you go into the digital LSAT. The same goes for when proctors talk or people make noise or whatever. Just be willing to raise your hand and say, hey, there's a problem, because so many people wait for 10 minutes or an entire section because we're just nervous about saying things, right? I'd rather just keep my head down and keep working.
So you could ask for them to pause your time if you have to turn in your device?
Yeah, if your device is having problems. You can say, hey, my device is having a problem, pause my time. And make sure it's paused.
Can you watch them do that?
You just have to ask. Just be like, okay, so my time is paused. Yes.
And I guess you'll know if you have more time when everybody else.
Yes, because when you'll know too, because you're hyper aware of what's going on. Whoa, I have 32 minutes left, and you're like, I have a problem, and you go fix it, and then they're like, okay, now you have 26 minutes left. You're like, whoa, right? So that sucks. But you want to kind of, because they don't have control over the timer. They can't give you more time, which is really lame, and hopefully something they resolve, because maybe they're worried about proctors not doing it right or something.
So you're saying it's just you have to catch it before.
You have to catch it before. You have to be like, okay, did you pause my time? And they're like, yes. Okay, great. Thank you. Just wanted to confirm that.
is registration when you, or maybe this differs per test center, I'm not sure, but is that now digital too, or do they still have the physical handouts that they're like
Oh, the
confirming?
printout.
Yeah, like on their end, is that still how the administration goes, or is that?
Oh, on their end they have
Digital.
they have a digital version which pops up on your screen actually.
Okay.
Yeah.
Gotcha.
But I think you still have to take in your paper one to check in.
Yeah, I should know.
Yeah,
Their
yeah.
side was digital on too.
Yep, you get see your face on your tablet.
Whole time? For you?
No. Finish now.
That picture's like 3 years old.
So don't forget your pencils. Cool. Any other questions?
Real pencils,
Real pencils, yeah. Yeah, you can't have mechanical pencils.
Still.
Still, yeah, for some strange
I
reason.
mean, we're digital now, so I figured maybe.
Maybe like we get a modern pencil? No.
So what's your experience with people like hitting like a learning curve?
I would say that most people feel like they've hit a curve, but they really haven't. It just comes with, because if you look at someone who's scoring in the 170s versus someone who's scoring in the 150s, the person in the 170s is going to spend less time reviewing, but it's not that much less given how many fewer questions they're actually getting wrong. So like someone who gets a 170, maybe they got 10 questions wrong, and they're going to spend an hour reviewing that stuff because they're going over each question they got wrong, they're going over questions that they got right but were unsure about. And when people are scoring the 150s, they get more questions wrong, so it takes them time to review it, but they're not reviewing as carefully. So really, as your score goes up, if you feel like you're hitting a plateau, you probably need to dig in more with your reviewing. Like, try to get concrete. So a lot of people, when they review, they say, oh shoot, I just need to review more carefully. I would say that's the most common thing I hear. And that's probably true. You probably do need to read more carefully, but it helps yourself if you can identify what word you need to read more carefully. Like, you know, when we're talking about these answers, it's like, what about most or harder or requires or whatever? Because every time you say that word, then you become more hypersensitive to those words in the future. And they just use the same words over and over again. Like we talked about never and stuff like that. And some of those are obvious, but some of them are less so. And when they're less obvious and you struggled, if you make that word explicit, then the next time you see a similar situation, it's more likely to pop out at you. And that's actually what saves you time too. Because a lot of times plateaus come from the fact that you're getting the questions right that you're attempting, but you're not getting any further. And you're like, well, I'm getting them right. Well, that doesn't necessarily mean that you know as much about that question as you could have. Because the more you know about the words and phrases that made right answers right or wrong, the more confident you are. And the more confident you are, the quicker you can get rid of answer choices. And then be like, oh yeah, that's the answer. And then it's like moving on. And that's what speeds you up.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay. So